this is how we are setting goals, how are we ever going to set great goals with our client? It has to be something that is pushing you. It can feel a bit daunting too, right? I think the problem with SMART goals and why I think they're so dumb, but what I focus on with our students is a big elephant in the room with this is that you need to be in alignment.
Welcome to Swift Coaches Academy, a podcast dedicated to bringing health and wellness professionals the uncensored truth behind what it really takes to succeed in the health industry with me, your host, Zenia Wood. As an accredited exercise physiologist and business owner for almost a decade, I'm on a mission to transform the lives of ambitious health professionals like you who want more and are ready to take action to create incredible impact in your careers and unlock financial freedom in your business. So join me as I speak candidly with industry leaders about the struggles and successes from within the trenches through thought-provoking conversations.
Hey coach, welcome back to another episode of Swift Coaches Academy. Today I'm going to be talking about setting clear as fuck goals and actually hitting them, and also why I think SMART goals are dumb. So first question I have for you is, what is your goal for this year or for the next month or for the next week even, right? So have a think about what your goal is. Try and formulate that in a sentence for me, and then say it out loud or write it down. Okay. All right. Hopefully you've got that. I'm going to go through some examples of goals and goal setting that I've done with some students who have come to us with prac placement, and we've tried going through SMART goals. And I think while it's a good start, it definitely misses the mark in a lot of areas. So I was like, write SMART goals. And I gave them really clear, specific examples. And this is what came back for some of the students. It was improve my anatomy. I was like, okay, well, what do I do with that? How are we testing that? How are we measuring that? SMART goals, right, is specific. So anatomy is not super specific. Measurable, there's no measure. Improvement versus what? Achievable if you have something to measure it against. Relevant, yeah, relevant to learning with anatomy, with exercise physiology. Timely, no. Potentially assumed by the end of prac placement, but nothing stated. But these are the kind of goals that I know that are common. And coach, if your goal was get $100,000 in my business this year, or it was to be at full capacity, these things can be great starting points, but it is not where we stop, and it is not a clear as fuck goal, right? A couple others that I have heard in terms of the exercise space for our prac students has been oh, I want to run an initial assessment by myself. And I'm okay, I get that. But if I just got you to run one tomorrow, does that tick the box for you? What actually is it? I don't know if it's actually running the initial assessment or if it's a little more deeper than that. If it's being able to complete all of the tests and choosing the tests that maybe I would choose in an initial assessment to specifically run someone through who has shoulder bursitis, or, whatever the condition may be, whatever's going on. It could be to have a detailed medical history and come out of that and have a really clear understanding of how to write their program. But run an initial assessment, while it is something that you can tick off yes, I've done it, I don't know if that's often the goal. Same thing, you can tick off yes, I've hit $100,000 in my business, but there are other things that we want to break that down into. That can be this big, far off or big vision goal. And then we need to break that down. Other things that I've heard our students have said is okay, I want to build rapport with the clients. I'm well, how are you measuring rapport? So some things really hard to measure. Okay. Same with running a good initial assessment, who classifies good, right? And so you could say, according to this standard or that document, or even with the improving anatomy, I think what we ended up working with this student was being able to clearly identify the muscle origin, insertion, and action of 80% of the muscles that are attached or are affected by the shoulder joint. Right. And then we said in 6 weeks time or whatever it is. That's a really clear goal as opposed to improve my anatomy. And I think that there's a problem with the way that we are taught this. And then the bigger problem I see with this is, if this is how we are setting goals when we are trying to do it, how are we ever going to set great goals with our clients? Right? If they say to you, I want to lose weight, and you say, oh, how much? Because you're trying to get a little bit more clarity. They say, oh, 5 to 10 kilos. And you say, okay, good. Is it 5 or is it 10? because very different things would need to happen to achieve either of those goals. And often when we make it too vague, we actually don't achieve even close to either of them because it's such a wafty thing. And yes, you can say, I want to achieve 10 kilos of weight loss and only get 5 and still be happy with it. But why don't we aim higher firstly? But why don't we just create real, like, clear line in the sand of like, have I hit it? Have I not hit it? Which I guess brings me to what I use in terms of our students that we work with, and it's called your MIT. Now, I stole this from a book called The One Thing, and they talk about your most important task. Now, I like to use this as a task that is pushing you forward, that is not just like a tick and flick, like, what are you going to do for the week? Like, oh, I'm going to, write my programs to my clients. No, it has to be something that is pushing you and your business forward, or you in your soft skills, or you in your technical skills forward for that week. So just doing the shit that you're already going to do doesn't classify as an MIT in our books. So setting up an MIT as opposed to a SMART goal, I think firstly can be a little bit more clarity because it's much smaller than that big overarching goal that we often set in terms of like improve anatomy. It's like by when, of what, like how are we breaking this down? Or in terms of like, I want $100,000, how are we making that an MIT for like, what can I achieve this week, right? Because $100,000 in a week is quite unrealistic, especially for a new coach. So trying to break that down, and it can feel a bit daunting too, right? Like, I think the problem with SMART goals and why I think they're so dumb is because, like, yes, they're clear on the outcome, but the MIT and what I focus on with our students is looking at what is the process goal? Like, what do you actually have control over? Because you don't necessarily have control over, let's say, what someone else grades you in an assignment based on like what they think of it, right? You don't necessarily have control over how many clients end up at the end of the day like working with you. You absolutely have control of the inputs and how you manage things like how many leads you get, how many client calls you have, how much you work on your sales, how much you work on your skill set, how much you work on articulating the value, creating, pain points and problems and identifying, highlighting those. You have control over those. But at the end of the day, it is not ultimately up to you as to whether a person sitting in front of you says yes or no, because we will all and have all had people say no, even if we had like the best sales call and we had like all of the things that they needed and whatever it is, there are going to be some people who say no. So at the end of the day, the actual like clients that we end up getting is not 100% within our control. Yes, we can do things to help improve that number or to like almost make it impossible to fail by going above and beyond, but there's always going to be certain things. Let's say like a client who's been with you forever, you only work in person, then decides to like move interstate, right? Like you have no control over that, but yet that means you've lost a client. All right. So let's have a look at, instead of using our SMART goals, yes, I think there's some merit in having them be specific, be measurable, absolutely achievable, relevant, timely, all of that. However, it doesn't explain the how, and it doesn't it doesn't, I guess, highlight the things that are outside of our control. So when we go through the how, or the MIT, as I call it, this is the inputs or the process goals. So if your ultimate goal, let's say for the week, is to get 5 new clients, then the input for that would be probably to have more than 5 conversations. Like the likelihood that you're 100% of every single person you choose is definitely going to want you at that exact time and that moment to start signing up with you and work with you within the next 7 days, pretty freaking low, right? Pretty freaking low. So what is the process goal of someone who wants to get 5 clients in the next 7 days? Well, you probably want to have like at least 50 conversations. At least. I'd be looking at like 100 or upwards. And these are real numbers. So for an example, we had the educational mentorship final like live round, as you know it. Things might be changing. Still keeping you on your toes, keeping you posted with that, not disclosing anything yet. But we had our final round of that late last year. And I actually specifically, personally reached out to, I think it was like 350 coaches. And these were people who knew me. So I literally went through Instagram DMs or like Facebook Messenger and messaged people who were following me on Instagram or who I already personally knew or something in the industry, in exercise industry. And I opened up conversations with them, right? We talk about how to do this inside the mentorship and exactly what to say and diving into the strategy of how it doesn't feel salesy or sleazy, or you're not like trying to sell to your friends and you can still get leads and referrals through it. But in terms of the outcome of me talking to 350 people, I think I got like 4 calls booked in, 4 calls from 350 people. And I think that's a pretty reasonable outcome based on the input. Right. And this is also, you know, people referring people who I don't actually know. So like I might know someone through Instagram, they might refer me someone else, whether they, you know, are interested or not, and so forth, and sort of move through that. You have conversations with people in the gym, and I used to do this all the time. This is how I literally got to full capacity so quickly when I first started. I literally just had conversations with every single fucking person in the gym. I knew everyone's name, everyone's dog's name. I knew what they were working towards with their goals, and I just built relationships. I think that oftentimes we get stuck as coaches because we think, oh, well, I'm just good enough. People should come to me, right? But like, how many things have you just had an ad pop up and you're like, oh my God, that's directly that I absolutely like the other week, it might have been late last year. I had this it was like ugly sweater company, but it was like Christmas edition, and they had these like family style ones. So I got one for me and my partner Harry, and we have our little kitty on it as well, and it's the most adorable thing ever. And you could individualize the hair color. So like I had pink hair and Harry had glasses, and like the kitten had like her like champagne like orangey yellow color on her, and it was just fucking perfect. And I was actually excited to be sold to, but I was not like actively going out of my way to be like, yeah, you know what I need this year? Like an ugly Christmas sweater. I had no perception of that, but because this ad came in front of me and was like, hey, you might want this. And I was like, I absolutely do. I was like, sign me up. Don't care how much it costs. I want 3. So I think my point with that story is that there are so many people who don't even know that you exist, but want and need the thing that you have, or need the outcome that you can help people achieve. And so I believe it's our duty and our obligation, if we're in the health industry and we actually give a fuck about helping people, that we should be going out of our way to make sure that people know who we are, what we do, and how we do it, so that when they're ready for our help, they actually know that we exist and they have access to us to work with us and to receive the help that we have so that we can help them with the outcome. I know for a friggin' fact, I would not have created as many changes in people's lives had I not been showing up on Instagram or having messaging conversations or, you know, creating partnerships and doing all these things and going out of my way to bring people into my sphere so they would start to know, like, and trust me, so that when they're ready to reach out, I'm ready and available for them to do that. Okay. So going back to a little bit more of the process focused goals as opposed to the outcome, wanting to look at what is that actually going to take, and making sure that you're also willing to do it. Like, yes, it's uncomfortable to have those conversations and it's awkward. And I remember I would walk the gym floor, like pace up and forth, back and forth so often. And I actually, for like a whole year, had this like goal every single week to get 10 new initial consultations. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that it should have only taken me like 4 weeks if I converted everyone. Let's say like 5, maybe 6, if we're being generous and people didn't convert. My conversion was pretty high, by the way. Retention was what I sucked at. But it shouldn't have taken me that long. It shouldn't have taken me a whole year to be at full capacity and still have the same fucking goal of like 10 initial consults a week. Because yes, that was a process goal, but we also need to have the outcome goal in mind and make sure that that is specific. So getting a little off track, but I guess the idea behind setting an MIT rather than these SMART goals, or making sure you have them both in conjunction, is understanding that we need to know what the outcome is, i.e. this many clients or this many dollars or whatever it is. And then what are the inputs that we need to do? And I realized my inputs that I was putting in were not focused on the right things. So I was focused focusing on 10 new initial consults a week, but I didn't look at my churn. I didn't look at my retention. I was just focusing on what was going in, not what was coming out. And so as a result, I was selling all these really short-term things where people would come with me for a couple of sessions and then they would leave, right? So let's start looking for our goals. Let's get clear on them, clear on why we want them as well. Like, why is it important to you? Because when shit gets hard and, like I was literally at the gym until 2 or 3 p.m. most Saturdays, not including like the 5 a.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, literally every single week to get these 10 initials booked in. But if I was not clear on my purpose for this and my why behind like really actually wanting to, make a difference, make positive changes in people's lives and, make business work for myself and do whatever the fuck it took to get there, then I probably would have been like, oh, it's too hard. Like, I have to talk to, like, are you kidding? I have to talk to 100 people to get 10 clients? Like, fuck that. I probably would have just tapped out way earlier, right? But if you're so destined on getting to the outcome, then you will do what is required in the process or the inputs. Okay. So,
Coach, real quick, are you loving where you're at in your health business, or could you use support to grow it? Do you want more financial freedom, more impact, and feel more confident just as a business owner in general? Because if so, now is the time to get off your hands and join us in the Business Mentorship program. We only have a few spots and it's by application only. We start Feb 5th, but we may close doors before that if we get all the best candidates in before that date. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's a 2x ROI guarantee. What that means is that I am going to make sure that you make twice what you're investing with me at least in the 12 months that we work together. So basically, this course is not only free, but it's going to pay you money. That's the whole point of mentoring. I'm so confident. I've done this with literally over 100 individuals one-on-one now for the past 4 years. And I'm so confident I can get the results with the people who I choose to let into our business mentorship program. That's why I offer that. And if that doesn't happen, which it never has, but if that doesn't happen, then I will work with you for free until you do. This is honestly something that is unparalleled in the industry. I don't know anyone else offering this. And so you will want to jump on this quick before our spots fill up. Again, link is in the show notes and I will see you there.
Focusing on those process goals and having our long-term goals in mind is super, super important. So maybe instead of like, I want to have 5 clients being like the outcome goal, what's the process goal for that, right? It might be to have 50 conversations with potential leads, right? It could be to book in 10 complimentary initial consults this week, right? And then the result of that could be ideally 5 new clients on board, right? Which would mean that you would have at least a 50% conversion rate from that sales call, discovery call, whatever, to client. And if you're tracking this stuff, it becomes really easy. You just work backwards from the numbers. I know that my conversion rate is really, really high. And so I don't actually need to have as many conversations anymore, but that's because I've worked on sales. So there's so many things that do tie into this, but if you can just, I guess, pulling back from this for a second, if you can focus on the process goals and make sure that they are aligning and getting you towards your like big outcome goal, then you are on the right track. What I see most people do is they're like, I want to get fit this year, or I want to like lose 10 kilos, but they don't have the inputs to know, okay, well, that means that I have to have like 3 healthy meals a day. I have to limit my, soft drink intake. And I also have to go to the gym 4 times a week for 45 minutes, right? Like those are the process goals that are going to achieve the outcome of someone who wants that outcome goal, okay? I also think it's helpful to break it down into these little weekly goals, and also making sure, something I spoke to one of our students about last week, weekly goals are not to-do list items, right? Like sometimes I'm like, what's your MIT? And they give me 3 things. And I'm like, it's your most important task. So if anyone's listening to this who has heard me say this to you, then this is your little subtle reminder to make sure that you're continuing to do this, because it's really important. We can kind of get lost in the weeds and be like, oh, these are the things I have to do, rather than like your MIT should be the thing that if nothing else got done that week, that would be the thing that would actually push your business forward. So it's a needle moving activity. It's not do the write the exercise programs for the current clients that I have. That's not going to move the needle. It might move it backwards if you don't, but we're looking for things that move the needle forward. So it might be to have 10 conversations a day with people who could be interested in working with us, right? That's a needle moving activity. Making sure it's not more than one and making sure we've got a really clear focus on it. I find that some people can break these even further down into daily MITs, but making sure it's really, really clear on a process. It's not focused on the outcome. So the process is like create one Instagram reel, right? The outcome would be like get 50 people to like it, right? Like we don't have as much control over the outcome, but we do have control over the process or the input. Okay. And then we can obviously tweak and adjust and therefore go, okay, well, this worked, that didn't. How can I get more likes or whatever it is? Okay. I think the bigger thing on top of this, we're talking about getting clear as fuck on our goals and setting goals that we'll actually hit. The big elephant in the room with this, from my perspective, is that you need to be in alignment with the type of person who would actually achieve that goal. So if you're hearing like, fuck, I have to have 100 conversations with people to get like, let's say 30 clients on board. And you're like, oh, that's hard, and these thoughts or ideas come into your head of, I'm not good at sales. Like I don't like sales. I don't want to sell to people. Firstly, we're changing lives. And so if you're selling someone's change of life, I think that's pretty fucking important to learn and get better at. But I also think it comes down to making sure that you have an alignment with the identity of the person who will achieve that. So i.e., you may say to yourself, I identify as someone, or I'm the type of person who follows through on my word, right? I actually was speaking to my boyfriend about this the other day. And there are things at the moment right now that I have been putting off and just not doing, and just like stupid shit, like not posting the things on Instagram or not putting time into things that really like I should know better. And it doesn't help me to think like, oh, well, I'm a piece of shit, or I fucked up, or I just should be better, right? And he said to me, well, when those feelings come up, when you need to do it, why don't you like let me know? And then by you saying it out loud, I can help hold you accountable. And because my brain works in the way of like, how could I cheat the system? I was like, well, I just wouldn't tell you. Like, he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I just wouldn't tell you that I didn't want to do it because I don't want to do it. But I am like I identify as someone who is of my word. So if I don't say it, then I don't have to do it because no one else knows it except for me. But also then my word with myself is sometimes a little challenged by that, right? But if I verbalize it out loud and then I let someone else down, like that to me is like fucking no bueno. Like I don't fuck with that. So he's like, well, fuck. And I was like, yeah, I think I need to change my environment, right? And so for me, that is about basically shifting what I do so that it's far easier to do the thing and it's set up ahead of time. So what I mean by this is if you are someone who's trying to lose weight and chocolate is your vice, don't have chocolate in the house, right? Because it's so much easier to not have chocolate when there's no chocolate in the house and you've deleted your Uber Eats app and you delete your credit card number from all the apps that could potentially get you the chocolate. Right? There's so many more barriers for you to do that. So you're probably just like, I won't have the chocolate, right? For me, it's a similar thing. I find that because I don't need to, or there's no reason for me to tell anyone that I don't want to post on social media, for example, I just won't tell people. And therefore I don't have to follow through because I haven't spoken it out loud. And so for me, when I'm saying like, I think I need to change my environment, it would be setting up in like foresight, like pre-planning and going, okay, instead of like at the time when I have probably the least willpower of the day, when I'm feeling like I don't want to do the task, that's when I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to verbalize, oh, hey, Harry, like, I don't want to do this thing. And then him being like, well, I'll hold you accountable. It's like, wouldn't say that. So instead, what I think works better for me is like, okay, well, every single day at 4 p.m., that is when I'm going to spend 20 minutes creating like an Instagram reel or whatever it is. And so that way it is pre-planned, just like our clients pre-plan sessions with us and they book the time and date in and they're going to be at the gym. We do this with ourselves, and then we have someone who holds us accountable. And now you need to make sure that the person that you choose is someone who is actually going to hold you accountable. Not like your mom who's like, oh, like it's okay that you didn't get it done. Like I still love you. Oftentimes this needs to come from someone who's not your partner, who's not your mom, who's not someone who's going to say, oh, it's okay, but someone who's going to like kick you up the arse a bit and be like, are you actually going to be the type of person who like taps out on yourself? Like, is this actually what you want? Like you said that you wanted a life of, you know, that you get to create by design, but yet you're not willing to put in the work now to achieve that. And so I think it's really making sure that you have some really strong accountability buddies and systems in place. So for me, in my example, it would be telling Harry and telling my business mentors in advance and saying every day, this is what I'm doing. I will send you like a screenshot of me when it's completed at 4:30 p.m. And so that is my accountability, because I verbalized that beforehand for the upcoming week so that I am then held accountable for that. And I also think making sure that we understand not just our integrity and the type of person we are that we identify as, but also understanding like really why we're doing this, like creating that really, really strong boulder, I like to call it, that is stronger and more intense than the want to not do it. So for me, for example, it's like if I don't post on Instagram today, it actually doesn't mean anything to me tomorrow. But if I don't do that multiple days in a row and 6 to 12 months from now, then my business goes backwards. Like that does mean a lot to me, but it's not for the fact that like just business goes backwards. It's like the depth of what that means. And so for me, it's like I get to help less coaches, you know, and then less coaches actually stay in the industry as a result. And then coaches fall out of love with coaching clients, or it's they don't achieve their big goals of, you know, scaling their business or growing it to 100K or leaving their full-time job or whatever it is. And that to me is so much fucking more important and stronger than like, oh, I don't feel like posting on Instagram today. So having that really strong sense of like, I like to think of it, I might have talked about this before, but I like to think of it about when you think of like one of your ideal clients who got like incredible transformative results with you, and you think, what if I never helped that person? And like that really fucking hits for me, because I have had clients who have told me that like they were on the brink of like committing suicide, or that they were like thinking about even just like throwing in the towel with their business and going to work for someone else and doing the thing that they hated again and like going back to the job that sucked. And like for me to not post one thing on Instagram for the fact that that could be the thing that helps transform someone's fucking life, like it is so much easier and more important for me now to do that hard little thing than for like to know that there is someone else out there who I actually haven't helped because I didn't pull my own finger out of my own ass. Pardon my French, but you're probably used to it by now. So create that big boulder, right? When you're setting your goals, it's not just about making sure we have the big outcome goal, the process goal that's going to achieve it, help us achieve that, and also make sure the process goals are within our control. I get people who are like, set up 3 meetings with people, and it's like, you don't have control over when they respond to you. So maybe it's sending the messages for that meeting. So outcome goal, process goal, have that big boulder. Make sure your MIT as well is a needle moving activity. It's not just like a tick and flick to-do list item with like definitely not more than one thing on it that is the priority, but also making sure that it's really clearly moving you towards your goals. And then make sure you also potentially identify any obstacles, right? Like let's say that you want to talk to 50 people this week in the gym, but then you're like, fuck, I'm only spending 2 hours in the gym this week outside of client sessions because it's a long weekend, like whatever, right? And so you might go, okay, well, could I speak to 30 people via Messenger or something else? Or, you know, how can I still achieve that outcome knowing that there is an obstacle in my way this week, right? So hopefully you've taken a little bit away from that, and that's going to help you set up some clear as fuck goals for this year, or even this month, or even this week, coach. And until next time, move swiftly. Coach, just a reminder that the business mentorship is closing soon. Now, if you are someone who wants to get incredible support for a full 12 months, see what it's like to actually grow and expand your business with an incredible group of humans, jump in the show notes now. And if maybe you're already doing business mentoring with me, or you know someone who could use this support and it's not you, maybe you've already worked with me, then you can also flick them this link in the show notes and send it straight to them and suggest that to them. We only have a couple spots left and we start on Feb 5th. So again, do not wait. Click that link now and I will speak to you soon. I have a tiny favor to ask of you, and that is to just hit that subscribe button if you have not done it yet. If you've made it this far, then I hope that this has been valuable for you and for us to get more incredible guests in front of your earlobes and faces. If you're watching us on YouTube, then please do that now. And if you have any feedback or suggestions for me, or something that was a golden nugget that really stood out to you in this episode, I would absolutely love if you flicked me a message over on Instagram at Zenia Wood Official. Until next episode, and in whatever you do, move swiftly.